All right. Good evening, and welcome to the Power That Runs Through Relationships Leadership Call. This is for any woman who understands the value of womanhood, the value of relationships, but also wants to dig in a little bit more to understand kind of how relationships are leveraged as a leadership tool. So, just to give a backdrop, Women Working Well is kind of birthed out of my doctoral research. It is a research informed leadership and wellness center committed to elevating the experiences, the capacity, and the well being of all women leaders. And of course, everything that I do centers Black women. And we know as Black women often that we are marginalized with other women of color when it comes to social scientist work. And so it's been really important in my doctoral journey to ensure that Black women have a seat at the table, but also that Black women are present in research. So if you're joining in, just drop your name in the chat. This is going to be a very interactive session. So when I say come as you are, I really mean that. You can have your hair in a bonnet, you can have your robe on, your tea, your journal. Yes, I will record this, but you can be on camera if you like. The point really is that we share space. And so I don't want this to feel like the second phase of our workday. This is really just us learning and growing together. And if you're unfamiliar, I'm Erica Stanley Wesley. I am probably 3 weeks away from formally being Dr. Stanley Wesley, and I'm super excited about that. But I am a scholar practitioner that focuses on women's leadership and also narrative inquiry and positive leadership theory. So I am also in executive leadership. So I do this in terms of like studying and researching, and then I'm in practice while I run a youth center, which is amazing and very difficult work. But today we are going to talk about labor. And I do not know of a world where any woman is not laboring twice. And when I say laboring twice, I mean some of us are laboring in the workplace. I think some of us are laboring in our job description, but we're also laboring outside of that job description. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because I have found in my own work journey, but also with my sister friends, we don't always have the language for what we're experiencing at work. And what I'm incredibly committed to is ensuring that more women have the theoretical and the practical language so that when you are asking for a raise, when you are asking to formally mentor, you have the language you need to have those discussions because often we lean in with our feelings and it's difficult for other people to buy into how we feel because sometimes, feelings aren't facts, but science is real, right? And so there is, in fact, a science behind leadership. Hello there. I'm seeing some familiar faces. Again, if you want to hop on camera, I would love that because I would love to see you. Just drop your name and where you're from in the chat so we all can kind of mingle and get to know each other. We're also going to talk about how you can be effective in the things that deplete you. So, anyone who knows me for real in real life knows I am big on boundaries because the thing that makes you great can also quickly become your greatest weakness. And the thing that determines that is often a boundary. So, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the difference between strategic leadership and reflexive caretaking. And a lot of us do this in the workplace, right? How many of us have had a job where like we've taken on more than the job description because we're caring for coworkers, we're caring for constituents, and it burns us out. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Yes, you're in the house, Jessica Martinez. Um, and then we're going to talk about auditing, naming, and distinguishing and redistributing our energy. Another thing that I am very big on, not that I've perfected it, because I'm still working my way through. But these are four things that in your leadership journey you may need to audit, give some language, distinguish behavior, and then redistribute. And then we're going to talk about systems because we all know that systems in the world need to change, but they also need to change within our organizations. And that's kind of what I study and write about in my not so free time. So let's start with a check-in just to get us all warmed up. Again, please just be involved, be engaged. This check-in question, where do you hold influence in your organization, even where you don't hold authority? So let's think about this. In another session, Jessica and I can do a Q&A about a job we had years ago where we didn't have the authority, but we certainly had the influence. So this can be something present day or something in the past if you want to reference it. And you can hop off mute or drop it in the chat. Go ahead. Did you want to say something? Because you came off mute. Jess?
Who, me?
Yeah,
No,
did you?
that's
I
an
didn't.
interesting that is definitely an interesting question. Um, and I feel like, I we have mastered that throughout time. I don't know. Today, presently, speaking about today, I hold all authority, and
Mm,
it's kind of like and it's really great for me to hold all authority over my time, over my, my company. So it's pretty good for me today. It's not like where you're waiting on people to pull a trigger or tell you what to do or get permission to do something. I'm in
mhm.
a different space today, so it's pretty awesome. Even though we owned that space back in the day too.
We did. We did. I love that for you because there's something so significant about kind of working your way into a place of authority and influence. And there's some younger women on the call. I know Joanna's on the call. And don't get too stressed in your leadership journey where you're like, how do I get there overnight? You really have to grow into it. And sometimes you have to be in a lot of bad, difficult situations because you learn, you grow, you refine, right? You build community. And as you do that, you then plan to be in that place. So, I can buy some time because I really would love to hear from everyone else. I would say right now, I'm in an interesting position because I've never had a COO title before, but I've been an executive director twice. And so a COO is like the second person in charge. So I really don't hold as much organizational authority as I'm used to holding. And I'm learning my place there. And some days it really feels difficult because I'm used to being able to call the shots. I'm used to be able to like walk in and be like, yeah, I want to give that person a raise. They work hard. Or I may say, let's ixnay this program. It's not working. So I'm kind of in an interesting place right now. Again, that's growing me because I'm learning to step back. I'm also learning to empower my team. And so when I'm in my staff meetings, they're saying things that like I've said in the one-on-ones. And someone was like, "Oh, I didn't give you any credit." And I'm like, this is cool. I don't need the credit because I'm watching you grow and I've been coaching you. So to see them kind of come into their power has been interesting, and also rewarding. Anybody else before we move to the next slide? Where do you hold influence in your organization, even where you don't hold authority? No, last month they were chatting. You guys are a little quiet. It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna push through. Okay, so we're gonna kind of nerd out for just one second because I want to talk a little bit about a theoretical framework that I think is interesting. For people who, kind of come out of community work, community organizing, nonprofit space, you kind of know the phrase power over or power with. But this really exists everywhere. And in the 1970s, there was a guy, John Baker Miller, who really made this distinction specific to women, actually, which I find interesting. And he noted that women are very relational and have deeper relational capacity for empathy, attunement, emotional responsiveness. And he had studied this to the degree in which he recognized that these were softer skills of leadership, but much more sophisticated competencies. Now, I'm sure it's an all ladies room, right? So we're like, yeah, we know that. We know a lot of what we do at work, it's not the hard stuff. It's not like the algebraic stuff. It's learning how to flex your emotional intelligence, maybe. It could even be de-escalating. I think women do that very well on the job, where we can step in and we see a crisis and we're like, okay, how do I get between these two people or these two circumstances? So he recognized that. And he also understood that systematically, these skills are devalued. And we know why, because the patriarchy has been designed by men. And unfortunately, they don't always view these skills as the most or the top leadership skills, which often means, right, like they're not the things that people will pay you big bucks for. So again, part of why I like to bring these things up is because you can reference these things. So when you're kind of asking for a raise, this is a part of how you do your work. It's a strategy. And so most of our organizations are structured in a way where people have power over other people. It's top down. And it makes it hard unless you're Jessica and you're the boss. It can be tough. But even if you're working with, let's say, a contractor, you could be working with a funder. There's always somebody over you, and you're beholden to that power to get things done, right? And so this is where most of us exhaust our day-to-day lives because we are in situations where we feel that control, that hierarchy, that domination, positional authority. You may be kind of in a particular role where there's someone above you and they remind you that they're above you all the time. And so that can make it very difficult. So we're going to shift today and try to think through how you can begin to develop in your sphere of influence because you do have one. You have people either in the office next to you, the cubicle next to you, folks doing community work with you, who you have mutual influence with, people who you can share in growth and development, people who believe in relational accountability. That's one of my favorite words because we live in a lawless world. I love accountability. People need more accountability, particularly leaders who have power, and even trust-based authority. So we want to shift from power over and then get to power with. Because organizations where there's more shared power are organizations that thrive. So, what is relational power? Not really, because I don't want us to get too twisted here, particularly as ladies. So, I don't mean niceness. A lot of women that I've been blessed to work with and even coach, they're like, oh, I try to be really nice. Nice is not going to cut it. Nice will get you walked over. Nice will get you pushed to the side. Nice will get you kicked out of a meeting that you really deserve to be in. So we're not talking about being nice, right? Kind, yes. And I might do a workshop on the difference between niceness and kindness because I believe in being kind, but I don't always believe in being nice because it's performative. And a lot of times when people perform niceness, aren't those sometimes the people at work where they're stabbing you a little bit? And they're like, oh my gosh, like she's so sweet. Yeah, because she's acting a certain way, but character-wise, it's not really lining up. So, relational power is strategic capacity. We're also not talking about people pleasing. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but generally speaking, as women, we struggle there, right? Big time with people pleasing. We want to please our spouses, our kids, our friends, our parents, our bosses. And that is rooted in self-protection. I want to please others so that I can protect myself from disappointment, hurt, shame. It's also kind of rooted in control because if I can please everyone around me, things will be good. But can you really please everyone around you? No, people are never happy. Okay. So, relational power is rooted in genuine connection. And I put emphasis on genuine because while we're kind to everyone, while we want to do good to everyone, you should be thinking about developing a professional network for you. That won't be tons of people. Okay. That's just going to be a small cohort of people who are going to give you honest feedback, people who are going to challenge you, people you can, hit up events with. And like you all share in certain interests. You want them to advance, they want you to advance. So it's not about pleasing everyone around you, it's about being deeply and authentically connected. And then relational power is not gendered destiny. Okay. I want to say this because most women are afraid to, and I'm not scared of nothing. Not every woman is naturally relational. Okay. Mean girls exist. And the reason that's important is because as you are developing your leadership, you have to know who to share with. So don't just assume that every woman is a woman working well because most women are on a journey, which means they have not been developed yet. They may be years away from um, where they need to be. So those things aren't really relational power. And I just wanted to make sure we put a name to that. Now, did I skip a slide? What does relational power look like? So we're talking about it, but like, what does this really mean? If that's what it's not, what is it then? And this is where theory kind of comes out of practice. So, what does relational power actually look like when it's in motion? What is it going to look like if you go to work tomorrow? What is it going to look like on a Friday when everything feels haywire and stressful? It looks like de-escalating conflict so projects don't stall. You may be leveraging a relationship to do that and leveraging it to a certain extent. It could be translating between leadership and frontline realities. This is something that in my career with Jessica, we were doing that again before we knew what that was. We didn't even have language for it. But to be able to translate from everyday people, people of color, right, community people, and translate that into nonprofit speak. So leadership then had a strategy. But we put boundaries on it because we didn't want to exploit our people. So this is the power part of being relational. It could be using trust to accelerate buy-in. Have you ever been in a situation at work where some of your colleagues are just not really into whatever the last directive was? Somebody often has to motivate the team, and it may be you that takes that on. And so you try to get that positive energy and you try to get people really connected. So you're using trust. That's the power piece. And again, we're putting parameters on it. It could be reading timing and organizational culture, right? A lot of times at work, everything feels like a crisis. It feels like it needs to be done yesterday. So using relationships in a way that's strategic, you can help kind of pulse in a healthy way so everything's not rush, 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 and that builds a better culture. It also could be holding on to nuances that other people miss. And this is something that I think I do a lot because I'm all about the details. And people don't generally like that because they're big picture and big thinking. And so you may hold space for those nuanced, super small things like, well, if we do that, it may frustrate this team or it may hurt these people's feelings. If we give this person a raise, what's the person going to feel like who's been here for 6 years? Right. And so those are all ways that you may be practicing this relational power. So when I say relational power, again, I really mean a leadership strategy. It's like a part of your playbook, and you're going to use it to increase your personal effectiveness and organizational impact. And I'm passionate about this because I truly believe that most women, not all, but most women, particularly women of color, do more for their organization than the organization does for them. And you can say amen if you can. We will go above and beyond. We will go to the maximum. And when it's review time, these skills aren't the skills that they're looking for. So we have to be able to use these skills more strategically so that we're able to get something or to do more for ourselves first, and then also for the organization. I did forget to mention if you have questions on anything, you can just drop it in the chat or you can raise your hand, and I'm happy to kind of stop and continue to chat. So I call this the central tension because most times, when we're honest with each other, the same capacities that make you effective and amazing are the most likely assets to be exploited. We all know that person on the job who's super, super social and they get put in charge of like Friendsgiving and it's not their job, it's not their in their job description at all. And so the company begins to exploit those skills and the person is burnt out, they're frustrated, they're angry, they want to quit because they're like, wait, I didn't sign up for all of this. And those things are not coincidental, they're structural. Organizations are designed to extract the most out of people. So it's up to people to put those boundaries in. And I know some people may be thinking, okay, Eric, are you trying to get me fired next week? I'm not. I'm trying to empower you to take care of you. That's the woman working well piece. Because if you don't do it for you, no one will do it for you. Get your job done, be effective, but also have some constraints. So, power becomes extraction when there's someone who's kind of the emotional buffer. That's the person at work who's absorbing the anxiety, the frustrations, the grief. Um, Sometimes my team wants me to be that. So I literally had to put a sign on my door, do not disturb, because it was like every 5 seconds people were in my office and they're unloading. So when they do that, what's happening to me? I'm absorbing all of it. Right? So I had to put boundaries and my CEO actually said to me, she's like, I don't necessarily like that sign on your door. And I was like, that's fine, but I need to keep it on my door because I need to get my work done. Right. So I can't be effective in my job if I don't put up a boundary. So that was me kind of pushing back against being the emotional buffer. Or when people come to me and the complaints, sometimes I say, do you want to type that up and put it in an email? Feel free to CC me on it. And that releases it from me now needing to do something, and I'm empowering my team to have voice and to also use their position in ways that frees me up so I'm not burnt out because I've been there too many times. Um, Power can become extraction with invisible labor. Those are the things that are really tricky at work because there's always somebody who's like the culture keeper, the person who, oh, we've always done it this way. Could be the person on the team who's been there the longest. They know everything about everything. They could be HR, really, because they've almost co-written every policy. Those people are participating in invisible labor. Will they get paid any more money to uphold those values in the organization? No. But they do it anyway because again, the company will extract that from them. Um, could be morale keeping, mentoring, conflict mediation. None of that stuff is in your job description, and yet you're finding yourself doing it. Jessica saying in the chat, I love the boundaries and examples. Thank you. Thank you, sis. All things we need to kind of be working on. Other times it may be a go-between without credit. Be careful here, I'll say, as an executive now, because a lot of times the person who's in the middle gets caught in the middle. That person who's telling a little to the left and a little to the right. As someone in leadership, I'm more inclined to question that person than the person who has the gripe. And so some people come into work and that's their role. They get their work done, but they're trusted enough to be that bridge and they kind of hone in on that. And that can be attention. If it's helpful, you can do that. But to do it always, it might not be. This is a big one that a lot of us suffer in where we're relied on, but we're not resourced. So, what does that mean? You're relied on every day to get something done. When you take time off, they're like, we can't do it without you. We need her. But are you resourced? And when I say resource, these are the things that I mean. Are you invested in financially? Are you getting a bonus at the end of the year? Are you getting that pay increase? Did you get a title without the pay? People will give you a new title when they can't pay you enough. So I'm not always into that. Like, you don't change my title, change my pay. If you really want to bless me, change my pay. Because we know as women, we don't get paid enough, let alone as Black and Latino women, we definitely don't get paid enough. Do you have, built-in remote days? Something I'm trying to build in my organization now, wellness days. Like, it's not a sick day. Maybe people need a mental health day. That's resourcing people. But a lot of times you're relied on to get that work done with no additional care for you as a leader. That's all extraction. That means the company is taking and they're not putting anything in. And then I wanted to name the strong Black woman tax because that's real too. A lot of times in our organizations, we're seen as a workhorse. She got it. She could do it. Oh, she always does it. She does such a good job. Meanwhile, we're crumbling inside because we're burdened, we're overloaded. Again, all of that is extraction. So, if one of these resonate with you, I highly recommend, writing it down and working through that. I'm big on journaling, but it could even be sometimes in my car, I put on my the app on my phone, the voice recorder, and I'll just talk through my thoughts, but really unpack because sometimes we're doing things that contribute to our burnout professionally, and we haven't unraveled that for ourselves. And we just continue on. And some of this stuff can even bleed into the personal life, but that might be another call for another day. But take the audit. Okay. So let's reflect because I've been talking a lot. I want you all to think through some of these questions. Um, I would put y'all in breakout groups, but I don't know. It's not giving chatty, so I'm nervous to do that. But please be interactive. The first question is, where do I deploy relational power most frequently? And is that a choice or a default? So where do you kind of deploy and enact relational power frequently at work? Is it more with your team? Is there a particular person on the job where you're like, oh, I feel some connection here? Um, what is it for you?
I guess I'll go. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, my where I deploy relational power most frequently is it is definitely with my team. It is definitely you know, giving them their tasks, directives, holding them accountable, working side by side,
Hmm.
planning things out and project planning and phasing things out, But I also rely on a lot of other people's expertise. Yeah, I could be the boss, I could be the owner, but I rely on their expertise, because I'm an expert in one area, but they're the builders, right? So like I can't build.
Mm. I love that. And I think for you, it sounds like a little bit of a blend, like you're intentional about doing it, but it's also a part of your personality, which is really cool. And for some people who are more introverted, it's less default, more of a choice. I know when I first started my career, I was like really quiet at work, really quiet, and it was bad because all the people like speak up. There's so much inside of you, blah blah blah, and I was just like shook. And so I was kind of choosy and selective with who and how I would be relational and how I would leverage those relationships. Had to be people that made me feel comfortable. And then just part of my journey, it was more, I think God really who put me in positions where I was completely uncomfortable and I had to grow there. And I didn't always understand it, the rooms he will call me in, or, I would go to a job and there's one boss, and then within 3 months, the person's quitting. And I'm like, God, every time I get somewhere, there's change. But it was him trying to push me out of my comfort zone until my default was like, I can build relationships with everybody, and I can also leverage those relationships as strategy. They don't have to be my bestie. They don't have to come over for Thanksgiving, but I can work with them to get things done. Right. So I had to grow there. Still growing there some days. Second question, where does my relational labor feel like leadership, and where does it feel like survival? I'm gonna call on Joanne. I feel like she's taking notes. Where does
I
your
oh,
leadership, yes, where does it feel like relational labor, and where is it like survival, fighting for your life?
I think that these questions are a bit hard for me to answer because personally, I'm not where I want to be. Like I want to be in the, leadership spaces, but I'm still super early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to pivot from one career to another. So I can't really answer a lot of these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like I'm living in survival mode right now, trying to get with like to the leadership roles, which is why, things like this and conversations like this are important because, it's teaching me what it takes to be a good leader. And that's just my long-term goal. So right now these questions are hard to answer, but I am taking notes and I'm enjoying the feedback that I'm receiving from you and Jessica as well.
Good. I love that because survival mode can be longer than we want it to be,
Mm-hmm.
and I want us to all think about where we are because at some point we were caught in a season where we were like, man, I can't wait to get out of this. And part of my passion with any kind of like professional teach back is I never had a call like this to get on. Like there was never a place where I could have logged on and gotten that support. So I'm so happy that you're able to do it. And it's not about me creating the space. It's just that the space is here now
Mm-hmm.
because you can feel exhausted in that survival mode. But what I will say is that every moment that you're strategic about relationships is a moment
Mm-hmm.
where you can move forward even if it's an inch. So I do want to shout her out because I saw her in a public space recently and she came up to me. Mind you, she had already like reached out to me on LinkedIn, but I note this because I immediately sprung into action because, again, as a woman in this stage of my career, I'm like, yo, if I can just put her in contact with one person, that might not unlock everything, but it's all helpful in moving forward. And so
Mm-hmm.
the survival mode can feel heavy, it can feel daunting, it can feel discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we have to have that positive mindset that even if you're moving forward an inch, you're moving. And once you get into the seat that you're looking for, you will be so much more refined. And the place won't be perfect, the people won't be perfect, the pay won't be perfect, but you will have perfected something and you'll be able to be a woman working well. And I think that's the point, right? That like we
Mm-hmm.
grow within ourselves and sometimes we put so much
Mm-hmm.
emphasis on the job, but like the job will change and you're going to carry you everywhere you go. So all right, question three. What boundary would protect my relational power from becoming someone else's extraction? What boundary?
I got off mute real quickly because that's an important one
Yes.
for me. And you know me very well, so you know that was hard for me. I
Hmm.
never had boundaries, right? I had to grow into boundaries. And for me, it meant what? Everybody extracted my peace, my time. I was in a million different spaces and places. Today,
Hmm.
I'm grateful that I have boundaries in my personal life and in my career life. And I'm grateful for a sister like you who taught me that, right? Like I'm like, wait, what? That was a little bit aggressive and abrasive, but it works. It works, and it like really solidifies your position, right? Or your requests, right? Like what you want to be respected. So for me, what boundary? So I mean, that was a cool question. I mean, I think it was really important for me. What boundary? For me, it's just communication and like literally
Hmm.
just setting things, just literally letting things be known. Like the boundary that I have today is protecting my time. And that's just it. Like, and not overexerting myself to somebody else's company. Because I don't know if you know this, but I'm also contracted to business develop this other company. And like, he knows I have my own business. He knows I'm doing both. And the other day he's like, "Oh, you're on your phone," and I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Well, you're on our clock." Excuse me. I'm on nobody's clock. I'm on my clock. So I
Yes.
put, and I'm not saying that to be rude or aggressive. Like, listen, you took me to business develop. You accepted this position, and now I'm going to tell you what I'm going to accept and what I'm not going to accept. Right. So I just
Hmm.
communicate very well now. I mean, I overly communicate it all the time, but now I communicate with assertiveness and like that aggression that I need to have to protect my time, to protect my next step, my future.
Hmm. I love that. I'm so glad you mentioned communication because that is really key. And a lot of times as women, this goes back to the niceness piece that I mentioned. Like when we're direct, we sometimes think that that's rude. Being direct is not rude. Now, culturally speaking, I'm going to say this. I think in our households, we were taught sometimes that that's being rude. So when you grow up as a young person and you start working, you go back into childhood teachings. And for a lot of women, I have heard them say, I had to learn to find my voice, right? I had to learn to speak up for myself. I had to learn to be direct. That means somewhere we were taught the opposite. So that communication piece is very important because do you ever notice how men communicate at work? Very chop chop. They don't have all the fluff. They don't have the fluff. They just get straight to it. And as women, we massage it, we dance around it. So I love that you're mentioning this because one, I think she's in a field that may have be male dominant, but also she mentioned protecting her time. And to protect your time is to protect yourself. So these questions are really about discernment. People who don't protect their time, you're all over the place, mentally and emotionally, because the fortress is down. So the boundary that we need does, in a lot of ways, start with communication. And I was in a meeting recently, actually, with this one woman, and she was talking about having a professional charter. And she wrote out the ways that she wanted people to treat her at work. And I was like, wow, like that's revolutionary. I had like never really thought about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to put down like a little charter. And she's like, yeah, I have these 10 points. And she's like, when I do new partnerships, I let them know this is what it is. If it's not this, it's nothing. And she was, again, very kind, but very much standard driven. And those were her boundaries because she said, you know what? I've been used and abused in this industry. I've given too much. I've had my ideas stolen. I've coached people who've worked for me and then they became my boss. So she took her power back and she put those boundaries in. And I was really impressed with that. So something I'm working on for the rest of the year, putting a charter together. So when people interact with me, even with women working well, they'll know what it is. Um, okay. The last one. Yeah, that's true. I will. I'll do a workshop on that and we can all work on it together. Maybe even in person. I think that might be a nice in-person activity. if we gathered, we had food and stuff. Okay. I use relational power to blank, and I need blank to sustain it. So this one, you kind of have to think about what your intention is going to be. I would say like one thing for me, I use relational power to create community, authentic community, and I need empathy to sustain it. If when I find myself stepping out of empathy, I can't be creating healthy community for other women. So empathy sometimes can be tricky though, because you start feeling so much like as an empath, where I'm just feeling and I have big feelings. My daughter has big feelings and it's good, but I have to put a boundary on that so I can feel, but then where do I stop feeling and I empower? So for me, like that's heavy work that I do because I will take on a lot and I will do for other people. And it's like, you're depressed. Oh my gosh, girl. And now I'm going to be depressed. And that's just not a healthy way to be functioning. So that's a little bit about me. And if anyone has anything else, um, there, they can add it in the chat because I do want to get to the next slide. Um, so 4 practices for intentional relational power. This is about strategy, right? Because I want you to get off this call and be like, oh, that was awesome. I'll tell a friend. But like, I also want you to know what to do, right? So the goal is to be intentional. And that power is one of the most effective ways for us to move throughout our work. And the goal is to be conscious about it. If you approach your work without intention or a consciousness, you will almost always burn out. So you have to do the work. And I, again, like I've spent years studying things like this, but I've also had a career where I could see my high points and I can see my low points. So when I give these 4 quadrants, I want you to think about ownership, ownership of yourself, because honestly, sis, no one is going to do this for you but you. So for me, I'm going to show you a couple things. This is what it looks like for me. One, journal. Bring this to work. Literally Monday morning, I'm putting some stuff down. What's my intention for the week? You don't have to tell me you don't have the time because if you tell me you don't have the time, I'm going to say you're not being honest. You have time if you wake up a little earlier. You have time when you're drinking coffee. You have time. Sometimes you have to kick someone out of your workspace. If you put the timer on, give yourself, even if it's just 3 to 5 minutes, put together an intention for the week. I want this week to be more peaceful than last week. So, what do you need to do to make that happen? Start talking to yourself that way. You are the boss of you. So, your job is not going to give you these tools. Your job is not going to give you these resources, right? Another thing that I do, I've used this planner. I think my mom is still on this call. I've used this planner for years. She knows I usually will ask for it for Christmas. This is the Day Designer Planner. I love this planner. I wish they would just start giving it to me for free because that's how many years I've been using this planner. But the reason I love this planner so much is because it maps the workout similar to the way that I think. So I can link in the thank you email, but I don't know if you can see this. So this is a day and it's divided. This part is your to-do list. This part is your daily schedule. So I put my meetings and things over here, but then I always have a to-do list. Email such and such. Handwrite note to student. Like whatever it is, put manual in ChatGPT, ask for edits. Be intentional so that as you go in your workday, you can begin to have more control over yourself. That's where it starts. So then the second step is these practices. So the first thing is auditing. Track where your energy goes week to week. Again, these are good tools for you to do that. What does that mean, Erica? That means It may be last week you had a great week. What was great about it? Did you have external meetings? Were you brainstorming? Was there a coworker that wasn't there and you felt the vibes a little bit better because they weren't there? Those are things you want to pay attention to. Um, were you acknowledged? So the audit is like just what's happening in the space, what's happening to me. And then you want to distinguish. Am I choosing this because it serves the mission, or I can't tolerate discomfort in the room? When you start to be more intentional about being relational, you have to ask yourself, what is it and how do I distinguish it from something else? Name the labor out loud. In meetings, reports, performance conversations, you want to be able to have the language that creates your reality. If you don't name it, oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. To distinguish, you want to distinguish between strategic deployment and reflexive caretaking. As women, sometimes we do things that are so natural to us, we're not being strategic. And I find a lot of women who are getting left behind in the workplace, meaning like they've capped out in a role, they've capped out in their pay. They used to be asked to sit on boards or join committees and they're not anymore because you've no longer been strategic because you've gotten comfortable. And now you're just kind of everything is a reflex. Gotta stay relevant, gotta stay on your toes, gotta refine yourself. Before you step into any room, ask yourself, what am I choosing? What am I choosing? And what am I going to do that yes may benefit the mission, but will it also benefit me? There's nothing wrong with that. And again, sometimes as women, we're afraid for things to benefit us because we were taught to be selfless. And it's something that I've been journaling about. It's like, I don't know if I want my daughter to be that way. And if she is selfless, I want her to also have like a little side of ruthless, not to harm people, right? But like demand for yourself what you deserve. And that takes consciousness. And you want to name it. Why is this important? Because if you don't have the language, you don't have the reality. So naming is not complaining. And again, a lot of times you're like, oh, I'm so afraid to speak up. I don't want to be seen as a complainer. It's not about complaining. But if you are being strategic about like, hey, I'm really great at being a listening ear to the team, and that's a soft skill, but these are the four ways that it's added value. Name that. Your boss is not going to do that for you. Or if you're even thinking of your resume, it's not always about the stuff that's on your job description. I have things on my resume that really have been soft skill related. I've convened X amount of people based on my ability to authentically connect with others. That wasn't in my job description, but it became a valuable resource. So again, put names to things. And then four, this is my favorite, redistribute. You do not have to be the only person in your organization who holds relational complexity. Develop capacity and delegate when emotional labor becomes a project. Okay? So often we're afraid to remix things. Develop the capacity of people around you. That's power. That's influence. If you're always aware of something, start to develop that in your team. That's something I've been working on because everyone's like, oh, I didn't even notice that. Okay, I'll help you. When you come into work, these are things you can look for. So you're not the only person. That helps you redistribute your energy, conserve your energy, and strengthen other people around you. And that becomes powerful. So you're less likely to burn out, you're less likely to be frustrated. It allows you to sustain. And I think if there's any gift that women deserve, it's that, right? That like we can sustain ourselves every day at home, in community, and in work. I hope I'm making sense. No one has any questions. I'm just rolling. Um, okay, so accountability. Before I close, I do want to say that it is important for organizations to be held accountable for the ways in which they benefit from our relational work. And unfortunately, we live in a world that is not ready to do that. So, again, part of my passion is if I can help equip more women with language like this, more tools, the more we can be those change agents, right? And also, the more when we're in that boss role, we can say, hey, you know what? I can do something differently. So when people come to you and they say, "Oh, we couldn't do this without you," that's not a compliment. I want us to stop thinking that because someone couldn't do something without us, it's a compliment. It's not. It means that they have no intention of hiring another person to share that load. And that's not fair to you, right? So we need organizations to stop pillaging and extracting from us and start building networks where the work is shared and where everybody can do well. So when we think about the failure to name labor, the failure to compensate labor, the failure to protect people who are doing that labor, we are not distributing work equitably. And 9 times out of 10, who does that harm most in the workplace? Women. So part of relational power is rooted in organizational assets. And if we can do this well as women, let's leverage it in a way where we are able to thrive and organizations can do well. Now we have a checkout question. And I want us again, we got to be forward thinking. We got to think about what we would do differently because if you do the same thing over and over again, nothing changes. So, what's one thing you're going to name, protect, or redistribute next week or next month? And you can come off mute if you want to say something. You can drop it in the chat. Um, I think one thing I am going to name is we have a staff person who always stays late. And so when the kids need a ride or a pickup and their rides aren't there, she's there late and everyone else is going home. And so I want to name that. And then I want to leverage my relationship with some other staff members to figure out how we can get some support for her. Because I think she's on the edge of burnout. And I was beginning to absorb that as like my own challenge when really I think all of us can work together. And then I'm going to redistribute next month. I created some goals for my team because there's some things that I'm just doing that I think if we all did, we could be less stressed as individuals. But if you have anything there, put it in the chat. And I will leave you with this. Protect what you carry. You do not need to abandon relational leadership. It is powerful. It's one of the most powerful things I think about women. But in order to hold power, we have to have boundaries. And you deserve to lead in a way that does not require you to disappear in the process. So protect what you carry, name what you give, and refuse to let anyone call extraction a compliment. So, thank you so much for sharing space. I try to be very intentional to keep these calls to an hour because I know that all of us have an extraordinary amount of things to do. But I hope that this encouraged you. If you have any ideas for future discussions, let me know. Genuinely here to serve and happy to do so. I do want to give the information for our Women Working Well retreat. We are already selling tickets, so if you have not gotten one, um, please, please, please get one. Judith Corpue, she is the president of New Haven Bank. She is going to be our keynote speaker. She is phenomenal. I am so honored, genuinely, also so shocked that God has put me in a position to work with someone like her on this. And so she is her own woman working well. She's going to talk to us about all the rooms that she's had to be in um, as a woman of color in banking and what that journey has been like. She also does a lot of micro lending. So for those of us with businesses, I thought this is a great person to talk to us about how we can begin to get our small business ideas up and running and secure the bag, right? Because that's important. So, if this is your first time joining one of the calls, in the thank you email, I'll send you the code to get 20% off. It'll come with a workbook, some leadership boxes. So, in your box, you'll have some physical tools and resources to continue being a phenomenal woman who is working well. And as always, reach out to me. I'm super accessible. We do newsletters every month on Substack. The videos are on YouTube. You can follow me on LinkedIn. And yeah, stay connected. So thank you so much. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm also gonna stop recording and we can just vibe out. Aw, thank you.
I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad, even though I'm still a little under the weather.